Good evening, everyone, or good day, depending on where you are in the world. I'm Russell Grossman. I'm one of the executive at the European Cantors Association, and this is the last in our second series of Voice of the Cantor, cantors who have made their mark. In a second, I'll introduce Alex Klein, who will be introducing our cantor this evening, Cantor Gideon Zelermyer. But first, for those who are new perhaps to the European Cantors Association, just a couple of sentences about the European Cantors Association, which was established in 2012. We exist to uplift and keep alive the depth, the breadth and richness of Chazanut in all its forms, both traditional cantorial music, respecting and honouring the richness of our tradition, and modern approaches to the cantorate, looking what is happening in the future. We therefore seek to strengthen, uplift and highlight the importance and centrality of the cantorial tradition in all its richness and its diversity for people to appreciate and to have access to. We're an independent organisation, we're affiliated to no specific branch of Judaism, and we reach across the spectrum of Jewish worship to ensure the unique music our prayers continues to enhance synagogue services for generations to come. We arrange cantors conventions along Orthodox lines in the UK and European cities. Our academic wing presents international conferences in partnership with universities around the world, and we present Zoom talks such as this one, The Voice of the Cantor, tackling some of the burning issues in the cantorial world today, blessed by participation of world-renowned cantors and musicians. Alex Klein, who is the interviewer this evening, has always been passionate about the music of the synagogue. He was born in London, he studied at Jews College, attending Reverend Brill's cantorial classes. He settled in Manchester, where he brought significant Jewish artists and cantors to the UK for concert tours. He's been a leading figure in synagogue music in the UK, lecturing widely and heading the Jewish Music Institute's Synagogue Music section. He is now the director of the European Cantors Association. Alex Klein.
Thank you, Russell, and welcome everybody to our last in the series 2 of me chatting away to chazonim and who have made a difference in the world of Jewish music. I'd like to welcome Gideon Zelermyer, who I'm so pleased accepted my invitation, and welcome, Gideon. It's good to see you, and it's been quite a few years. I think Prague was the last time we were together.
Since Prague.
With our wonderful mutual friends, Ray Goldstein and Naftali Herstik, and the choir of the Tel Aviv Cantorial Institute. Okay, welcome. What I'd like to ask you, Gideon, is where did you grow up, and what sort of household did you come from? Was it a musical background? What made you come into music?
You're making a big assumption that I've grown up.
Well, we never grow up, do we?
I grew. First of all, I have to say, Alex and Russell, thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure. I am most of the time a long distance admirer of what the ECA does, though I was really thrilled to be with you all in Prague. And what you do is very special in the program. I have to say that I think that you were among the first to sort of jump onto the online programming bandwagon at the beginning of this bumpy road that we've all been on for the last couple of years. And it's been a tremendous source of inspiration and engagement for us, and a nice way. You know, not everything bad has happened in the last couple of years. It's nice that we've been able to connect with colleagues and with organizations around the world, and you've really been leading the charge. So I send you my congratulations for your efforts.
Thank you.
I grew up in West Hartford, Connecticut. I was born in Providence, Rhode Island, and I was living in my family. So my father is a rabbi and my mother is an opera lover. So the joke always used to be, across the two of them and you get a chazan. But that wasn't necessarily the path for me at the beginning of my life. I really thought that I wanted to pursue the same career that my father had. And for as long as I can remember, I sort of fashioned myself an idea of how I would be as a rabbi. But when I was in high school, I went to a remarkable high school in Connecticut that was really a public high school, but that had a nationally renowned music program. And I began singing in choirs. And I also began singing in the choir on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur at my synagogue growing up. My dad's synagogue for many years, about 40 years, had a tremendously noteworthy American cantor, Arthur Corrett, who was a pupil of Adolf Kachko, and he had a tremendous, ringing, rich tenor voice. He did actually one of the first televised broadcasts of an opera in the United States, a regional broadcast in Connecticut of Pagliacci in the late 40s, I believe, or early 50s. And he was a wonderful man. He used to sit me on his knee behind the bima and say, "I'm going to teach you to sing in an opera voice." And I had no idea what that meant. But I went to my first opera at my mother's urging when she took us when I was 6 years old to see Carmen. And she had this huge collection of opera records I never really listened to because I just sort of thought it was large people screaming in a foreign language, and I didn't really get it. But I started, Arthur Corrett's successor was Cantor Don Gurney, who is a native of Cleveland, and who grew up with the great cantor Saul Meisels, and who brought with him a tremendous choral focus on services, and really rejuvenated especially the High Holy repertoire, which was the only time that my shul growing up had a choir. And as a high schooler, I started singing in the choir. And I used to sing duets with Don's wife at the time, Cantor Faith Steinsnyder. And that was a lot of my childhood experience in shul. And I see Faith is here. A lot of my childhood experiences in shul were growing up with that. The other person who had a tremendous impact on me at that time, who was also here, is Cantor Joseph Ness, who is a soul brother of mine and who always involved me in the, I mean, for those of you who may not know of the programming that Joseph does at his synagogue in West Hartford, it is beyond anything that I have ever seen anywhere on this planet. That a person can sing Raymond's male choir arrangements, put on concerts of Berg's violin concerto, and Beethoven choral fantasies, where he selects a young tenor, me, to sing the tenor solo. And what he gave me, I'll never forget. And what he continues to give me in friendship, I never forget. And what he did for me was he brought Naftali Hershtik to West Hartford when I was in my junior year, my third year, for those of you who are non-Americans, at George Washington University in Washington, D.C., where I was majoring in Judaic studies, where I was president of Hillel and led services on Friday nights alongside another person that I see here, Cantor Evan Cohen. Evan and I have known each other for 25 plus years. Evan used to lead the reform services. I used to lead the conservative services, and then we would have a drink together afterwards. And we both thought we were going to be rabbis at the time. And Naftali foiled those plans, certainly in my case, because I happened to be home at spring break. Joseph brought Naftali in for a concert. He asked me if I could sing in a male choir. So I became an opera lover at the end of high school, and I always had this issue of why is it that I felt that there was a difference in the standard of good singing and good musicianship for the opera and classical world versus the Jewish world. It used to really bother me, with, of course, the notable exception, an obvious one, of Richard Tucker. Admittedly, I wasn't as well versed in the cantorial greats as I could have been at that point in my life. I had never heard of Naftali. I showed up to the rehearsal. Naftali opened his mouth, and my world changed. And I said, "Where have you been all my life? And if by some strange twist of fate, I end up wanting to become a chazan, he's what I want to be like." And I remembered that. And I bought his recording. I had him sign it backstage. And I said to him, "Someday I'm going to be in Jerusalem and I want to sing in your choir. How do I do that?" And he said, "You just call me." So still at George Washington University, studied voice because I thought that I wanted to understand what I was listening to in the opera, either in the opera house or on the recordings that I was swiftly accumulating, and you can see on the shelves behind me. And I thought it would be a handy skill to have as a career, with a career as a public speaker, as a rabbi, to be able to produce my voice and so forth. And it took over my life. So I actually graduated from George Washington. I actually matriculated to rabbinical school at Jewish Theological Seminary for year one. And at the same time as I started rabbinical school, my father's cantor in West Hartford. And for those of you who don't know the geography, West Hartford is about an hour and 45-minute, 2-hour drive from Manhattan. My father's cantor left to take another position. And the synagogue was desperate. It was coming up to late spring, early summer. The president of the shul called me and asked if I was available to daven on Rosh Hashanah as the cantor. And to that point, I had done it once at a small shul in Washington, D.C. in my last year of university. I asked the president if he'd spoken to my father about it, and he wisely said, no, I have kept you and your father free from allegations of nepotism. I have not spoken to your father. I'm speaking to you directly first. And so I eventually obviously spoke with my father about it. And that Rosh Hashanah was Rabbi Zelermyer and Cantor Zelermyer sharing the bima, even though I did not let anybody call me Cantor because I did not feel that I had done anything to earn the title at that point. But I loved what I was doing. I loved what I was doing on the weekends, and I hated what I was doing in rabbinical school.
That's so poignant, because your friends are my dear friends as well. Joseph Ness, I've spent many times with him with the Night Project and in Vilnius, in Hanover, and various other places. We're on the same page, and I admire him tremendously for what he has done, not just in West Hartford, but he's done it in the Jewish music field continually. And Naftali, I knew him from the day that he first came to the United Kingdom, Finchley Synagogue, and we have remained friends ever since. And he did my chuppah in Manchester, which was the first chuppah he ever did outside London. And we introduced me to Alex Knapp, and then Raymond Goldstein, and I was his children's brisses, and when they were born, and we're very close as a family. So we've got a lot in the background in common, and I understand why you became a cousin in the way you are today, because of those wonderful influences. I mean, if you want to do something, do it properly, and you couldn't ask for better teachers or better mentors.
Well, I was even more fortunate because I think we all, us professional chazanim who have studied and who have devoted ourselves to honing an art and a talent and learning a repertoire and a nusach and investing in years of refining those skills. I think we all know the feeling of sort of I mean, I hate to put it this way, a pretender coming along and playing the role, taking on the title, not necessarily doing it in a way that we might find appropriate, and maybe not having earned their stripes, so to speak. I didn't know what I was going to do with this being a cantor thing when I was in rabbinical school. But here I was serving as cantor at a 800-900 family synagogue, and I had no idea what the heck I was doing, other than what I had grown up with every Shabbos.
But because of the background of growing up, growing up, like the old style children's services, knowing how to daven, knowing the Zemirot, knowing the tunes of the day, which is not, it doesn't happen today. I mean, I believe if it's not broken, why try and fix it? You can't reinvent the wheel, but people are trying to reinvent the wheel.
One of the most special things that anybody has done for me was what Joseph did for me during those years. Because whereas he could have said to me, "Look, kid, I get you have a nice voice. I get your father's the rabbi, but don't get too comfortable in this because another real professional cantor should come along and take this job. And he could have been that way with me, but instead he opened his arms, he opened his knowledge, he opened his heart. He gave to me freely every opportunity. I'll never forget the first year that I was there. We used to have this rotation of shuls that would host slichot. Because slichot in North America is not what slichot is in the UK. It's not what it is in Canada. And in order to get a crowd out at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night, you used to have to combine 4 or 5 shuls. And here I was, 21 years old, having all of a sudden been intoxicated by the recordings of the Great Synagogue and Naphtali that I heard. And I go to Joseph and I say to him, well, my father's shul is hosting slichot this year. Can we put together a male choir and sing some of these things? And Joseph said, hell yes. And we did it. And it was the first time that I saw Raymond Goldstein's handwriting on a page of music. And it was the first time that I felt as though I was, given the keys to the big boy car and allowed to drive on the road, on the highway, and that a real cantor who heard Naphtali do this stuff and who knew what it was supposed to sound like was there next to me, conducting me and coaching me. And when I told Joseph that I was leaving rabbinical school and I was going to study with Naphtali, the first thing he did was he cried. And I'm getting emotional thinking about it. The second thing he did was he told me the most amazing thing that anybody had ever used to describe the way it was to hear Naphtali daven at the Great Synagogue. He said, it doesn't matter what's going on in the world outside the Great Synagogue. It might be terrorism, it might be politics, it might be anti-Semitism, who knows? But when Naphtali goes up to the Amot to daven, you know that for the next 3 hours, everything's going to be okay. And that to me was my first indication of what I was stepping into, and the person that I was going to learn from, the person who in a very short glimpse of a concert won my heart and changed my life and my aspirations. And Joseph gave that to me. And then all of a sudden, a few months later, I found myself in the hands of Naphtali, Raymond, and Chaim Feifel.
I mean, this must be a culture shock to begin with in some respects, but how did you integrate from coming from your background to something and the school you went to in New York, which is, this is Israel, this is Naphtali. I know Raymond has his ways of doing things. Chaim Feifel, who I absolutely adore.
Raymond doesn't have his ways of doing things. Raymond is not. Raymond is very flexible, and Raymond is appreciative of everyone else's musical gestures. I'm sorry, Raymond. I had to make a little bit of fun of you. I remember the first time that I went into Naphtali's apartment. He invited me. I came in May of 1999 to sort of interview this whole thing and see whether or not I wanted to study with these people. And Naphtali invited me over to his apartment at 7 o'clock on a Sunday evening. At some time within the first half hour, Naphtali said to me, so who's your favorite tenor? And I didn't know anything about Naphtali's knowledge base about opera. And I said, well, maybe not somebody that you might know. He said, try me. I said, Alfredo Kraus. And he had the widest grin. And he said, Alfredo, I knew him so well. Alfredo had been in my house in London. Alfredo came to hear me daven at Finchley. He came to Shabbos lunch at my house afterwards, and so forth. And I said, okay, this is a good beginning. But then he invited me at 7 in the evening, and sometime around midnight, he said, I want to show you a video of some of my students. And he sat me down in front of his television and popped in a VHS cassette and pressed play. And there on the screen was a Ger Chassid. And I said, wait a second, pause, please. I'm the conservative rabbi's kid from Hartford, Connecticut. What is he going to have to say to me? What am I going to have to say to him? How is this going to work? Because, there's a little bit of judgmentalism that goes on sometimes between people that grew up in Reform and conservative households and Reform and conservative synagogues and Reform and conservative rabbis and so forth. And I was genuinely apprehensive. And Naftali said to me, you are going to be respected for your talent, for your hard work, for how far you've come, and you can take my word for it, they will treat you as an equal. And if you don't want to take my word for it, take the word of someone who went through it, and he wrote down Eric Moses' name and number on a piece of paper for me. So I took Eric's number. I called him when I got back to New York. I was living in New York at the time. We had an hour and a half long conversation. And then to fast forward a little bit, the next time I spoke to Eric was in the spring of 2000, about a month before I eventually came to Montreal to audition for the job that he left when he went back to Toronto. But the first time I met Raymond, I remember we were walking out of the great. So, well, first it was Shabbat Chol HaMoed Sukkot, and Naftali introduces me to Raymond, and Raymond said to me, and he said, Gideon's going to start singing in the choir. And Raymond said, absolutely not. Who does he think he is that he can start singing in the Great Synagogue Choir? What kind of a musician is he? He has to audition. We have to see whether or not he can sing this music. We don't know who he is. And I said, okay, I'll just sit. It's fine. And walking home from shul with Raymond that Shabbos, I said to him, it's nice to finally put a face to the handwriting, because at that point, this was pre-finale days, and I only knew Raymond from his handwriting, which I love still, and I miss the handwritten scores. But I immediately saw, when he invited me to spontaneously walk up the endless amount of stairs at Rachel Imenu and Emek Rafaim, and come spontaneously for Shabbat lunch with him and Susie and their kids, that I was walking in not just to an educational experience, but to a family. And Chaim was, of blessed memory, was a force of nature who, if there was a ratio between physical size and the amount of energy that physical size puts out, Chaim's ratio is just off the charts. And the way that he urged us to dig into texts and to use every possible dramatic musical patterns, contrasts, to try to wring the meaning out of these words in such a way that, look, for North American audiences, the best that we can hope for is to do something that forces people to look at the other side of the page to say, why did he do that on those words? Why did he get loud here and soft there? Why did he get high there and low there? And Chaim was the driving force behind that aspect of my education. And so you put together the interpretive palette that Chaim pushed you to, the bibliography and repertoire and style and performance practices that Raymond give you, and the opportunity to sit opposite Naftali at his dining room table hours each week, each of you with a siddur or a machzor in hand, and go line by line by line by line, and then to sing in the Great Synagogue Choir every Shabbos and sit 5 feet away from him while he's doing what he does better than anybody that I ever have known or probably will know. And that is an experience that I was just blessed to have, and has influenced every concert, every davening, every coaching, everything that I do in this profession.
So if you had, as a cousin, a young man with a young family, and I say it with all politeness, there's a different generation, the old school and the new school, those that have been very successful and the new boys that are coming through. Do you find there's a difference between the approach to chazanas with the younger generation than there is to the older generation? And have you been influenced by some of the new styles? And if you have been, how do you bring those into the services? You know, the music of Beth Styles, for example, or Sol Zim, or people of that ilk.
Well, so there are a couple of ways to answer that question. First is, I think that the accessibility to the younger generation of so many different styles of recordings, of now, you know, the proliferation of source material that we can all find on YouTube just by typing in people's names and trying to figure out how many S's and V's and Z's in Kutsevitsky. But you can find them spelled in every possible way. And to be able to see these things, the older generation, probably, they had their big, heavy collection of 78s and LPs. We don't have to worry about that anymore. It's all a click away from us. And I think that certainly in my shul, and I'll talk about Shaar Hashomayim in a minute, there is a tremendous sense of virtue to have variety, and that sort of manifests itself in a couple of ways. First of all, unlike probably many of my colleagues, certainly in North America, I do not have a burden on me to sing the same tune every week. To the contrary, I think that certainly my predecessors, and I say predecessors, I mean, first of all, the cantors that preceded me, in particular, Nathan Mendelsohn, who was Jack Mendelssohn's uncle, and who himself was a noteworthy composer, a tremendous musician, a tremendous lamdan. So to give you a little history of Shaar Hashomayim, I guess I'm talking about Shaar Hashomayim for a second. Shaar Hashomayim was founded in 1846. It was originally an outgrowth of the Spanish-Portuguese synagogue here in Montreal, which is the oldest synagogue in Canada. And originally it was founded as the English-German-Polish congregation in 1846, as to differentiate from the Spanish-Portuguese. In 1887, this foundling synagogue of 40 years old decided that they wanted to upgrade their music and their davening, and so they founded the synagogue's choir. So we've had a choir at every service, Yom Tov, Shabbat, and so forth, since 1887, which is really remarkable, and I don't think exists in very many places at all. Nathan Mendelsohn was a tremendous musician. He knew all of the classics, but he also wrote a lot of original music. So did his successor, Joseph Gross. So did his successor, Sidney Dworkin, who immediately preceded me. And then in terms of the music directors, for a very long stretch of time was Jacob Rosmarin, who wrote a lot of original music, a lot of which we still sing. And of course, when I came to Shaar Hashomayim, I had the pleasure and the honor and the joy of working together with Stephen Glass for the first 10 years that I was at the shul. Stephen was at the shul for a total of 24 years. And Stephen really took the next level from, I would say, even in some ways from what goes on at the Great Synagogue in terms of pushing the boundaries of modern harmonies, modern Hebrew pronunciation, and taking repertoire from really all different periods of time in the Jewish musical timeline, from the out-of-print classics of Lewandowski and Zulzer and Naumburg and so forth, all the way to the music of Meir Finkelstein, the music of Jeffrey Schisler, the music of Michael Isaacson, and so many other modern compositions, including many of his own originals. So you know what? Maybe this is a good time to show
I was just going to say that.
A quick excerpt. And I'll go back into it because there's another part of your question that I have to answer, which is the younger versus the older generation, which I think is really important to talk about. What I'll show you is an excerpt from the series of High Holy Day videos that we did prior to Yamim Noraim of 2020, when we knew that we were not going to be able to be together. I know, and I sat in on the session that you did with Lionel Rosenfeld, and certainly the work that he did inspired us to do the work that we did on that year's High Holy Days, which were produced by Stephen. And you'll see that I can explain the post-production or the pre-production process afterwards. But I play this both because it starts off with an introduction from my rabbi talking about the origins of Shaar Hashomayim and its connections to the Great Synagogue of London and Duke's Place. And I also play this because, strangely enough, it's the first thing that I ever sang for Raymond when I came to audition for him to see sort of which direction we would go at the beginning of our studies together. And he said to me, "Really? Why do you know this piece?" But I'll explain to you why I know this piece after I play it. This is Alman's Meloch, an excerpt from Alman's Meloch.
Back in 1846, the founders of Shaar Hashomayim, which was then called the Congregation of English, German, and Polish Jews, they wrote in the bylaws that the prayers of our Montreal synagogue should be just like the prayers of the great synagogue at Duke's Place in London, England. And for many years, the choir director at that London synagogue was Samuel Ullman. Listen to Ullman's composition, to the concluding phrases of the kingship section of Rosh Hashanah Musaf.
Fantastic.
So,
it's just something, it's not new to me. It's something I'm used to and I miss because I don't see it anymore. It doesn't happen in the UK, and that's so upsetting. You know, I'd rather stay at home and do it myself and sing like that and pray to God the same way. And I'm jealous of you. And I'd say that in a complimentary way. I mean, this is so important because it's the taste, the flavor of the Yomim Na'arayim, elevating the prayers, you know, lamata, you know, this world to that world. And as a chazan, this is the shliach for the tzibor, for those people who cannot daven, those people who don't know how, but it elevates everybody who's surrounded with it. And kol hakavod to what you're doing, and long may it continue.
Thank you, Alex. It's very kind of you. It's you know, Shaar Hashomayim is an anachronism in many different ways. From the fact that we have a tradition where the leaders of the congregation still wear top hats and striped pants and morning coats. My favorite, and the way that I knew that I was at home at Shaar Hashomayim was my first Kol Nidre, when you know, the hour arrives, and they publish in the bulletin that attire for men is black tie and white for women. And I come into shul, the ark is open, the Sifrei Torah are out, the choir is standing on the bima, and I start to walk to the Amud, and the Parnas says to me, "No, not yet." I said, "What do you mean not yet?" And he said, "Not yet." I said, "Well, everybody's waiting for me. It's time." So whenever he considers it to be yet, he leads me to the Amud, opens up his machzor, takes out a tattered index card, and very quietly says to me, on behalf of the leadership and the trustees of Congregation Shaar Hashomayim, it's my honor to ask you to daven on our behalf on this, our 159th Yom Kippur. May your prayers be heard on high, and may we all be inscribed in the book of life for the year to come. And I started to shake, and I started to cry, and I had never heard such a thing in my life. And it was unbelievable how it centered me and focused me on what I was supposed to be doing, my role as Shliach Tzibur for these people. And I've never experienced anything like it, and I knew that this was the place that I needed to be. And to have the soundtrack to the davening be music like that, and to have, but so one of actually, but it's interesting. So that was also my first time experiencing something which was really unfortunate about my first. This is my 18th year at Shaar Hashomayim, so my first 14 years at Shaar Hashomayim was that we had this awful practice of davening from different machzorim on Yamim Noraim, so that it would go something like this. The announcement, either by the rabbi or by the gabbai, would go in the Adler Machzor, page 4, in the Birnbaum Machzor, page 76, in the Art Scroll Machzor, page 295. And sometime they would say, it would change around the order of the books. Sometimes they would say the number first and then the book. People didn't know where we were. The texts were different between the books. It was really ridiculous. So talking about the ways that Chazanim need to find to make themselves valuable in their communities beyond just opening our mouths and singing pretty, we embarked on a process where we were about to buy the Koren Sachs Machzorim. And I said, and it was 2 volumes. The first Rosh Hashanah volume was like 1,200 pages. The Yom Kippur volume was 1,600 pages. We needed to buy 3,000 copies of each book. Tremendous bill that was going to, amount with this. And I said, wait a second, before we go and present this to the board, I said this to the rabbi, give me a minute with these books. Let me take them home for a week. I took them home, I paged through them, I pointed out all of the different places where the texts vary from what we usually sing. And then I also started to paperclip them and say, well, these pages could be used both, these pages could be used both. And I said, before we present this, I'd like to talk to the people at Koren myself. And I spoke to them and I said, would you permit us to make a bespoke machzor? And they sort of said, we never entertained such a thought. Maybe, let's figure out what it would cost. What would you do? How would you make it possible? So I showed them Psukei de Zimra can be used for both, and Shachar can be used for both. And then we need to have different branch off points from there, and so forth. And long story short, it took a year and 10 drafts of 1,500 pages each time. And I should have taken it down. Up here we have the bespoke Koren Sachs Shaar Hashomayim Machzor. And we actually, I'm going to share this with you because you'll enjoy it. We made an advertisement to roll it out to the congregation. I think you'll like this.
Page 22, Birnbaum, page 17, Art Scroll, page 4. Now continue, Adler, page 28, Birnbaum, page 59, Adler, page 75, and 9th In the new Shaar Hashomayim Machzor, page 1.
That was a tremendous labor of love for me because it was something that benefited directly and enhanced my ability to imbue meaning and to connect people to the davening. And I mean, you probably noticed, by the way, that there was a small printing error and the cover turned out blue instead of red. It did save us a percentage off the actual bill at the end because it was Corin's mistake and not ours. But it has remarkably changed our experience on Yamim Noraim because everybody feels focused and literally, not just figuratively, on the same page now. And this was largely my doing, to go through page by page, and actually to go back to the Duke's Place connection. When the books that they sent me to review were Nusach Ashkenaz books, and I said that there were lots of textual variations. They said, given the history of your synagogue, maybe you'd like to peruse our Nusach Anglia books. I said, you have Nusach Anglia books? I had no idea that there was such a thing. But of course, Rabbi Sachs of blessed memory saw to it that they did that. And in all the instances where there were textual variations, our minhag followed Nusach Anglia. So now our books say Minhag Shaar Hashomayim.
You use what we commonly call the blue book, which comes from Nusach Anglia. And
yeah, for sure. So one of the things that we are able to do, we've been able to do, and in particular that Stephen and I were able to do, was to take certain moments throughout the davening as we experienced them each year during the years that we worked together, and to say that there were certain things that were not necessarily, they didn't get what we considered to be the treatment they deserved. So one of the things that we did was everybody needs to sing Lewandowski's Zacharti Lach on Rosh Hashanah. But something special happened to me in that my Bechor, Max, was born in such a way that his bris ended up on the first day of Rosh Hashanah. And after that, I could not imagine going through singing, going through the paragraph in Zichronot where Haven Yakirli is, and all that I sing is V'ne'emar 4 times. So Stephen and I created a hybrid version, Lewandowski and the Schulsinger versions of Haven Yakirli, so that I could sing those words because they mean so much to me, especially given the connection of my son's bris on Rosh Hashanah. So I'm going to play that for you.
You didn't use Malofsky?
No, didn't use Malofsky because...
Because you could have got the Harvard SATB and you could have used the other structure.
I could have, but to my taste, it's a great concert piece, but it's not what I want to sing in shul. So here's our version of it.
Fantastic.
Haven Yakirli im Yeled Sha'ashuim. Are you not a treasured son to me, my child of delights? As I speak of him, always I remember him again, and so it is that I long for him. Rachem arachamenu ne'um Adonai. I will tender him compassion, says the Lord. I sing these words each year, but never really felt their power until 12 years ago, on the first day of 5769. It was the 8th day of life for Max, our firstborn son. His Brit Milah took place on this bima on that Rosh Hashanah afternoon. And, with the help of God and a good teacher, he will celebrate his bar mitzvah on this same bima only days before the next new year. Today is Yom HaZikaron, a day of memories, and Zichronot is the most intimate section of the Musaf service. Ki zecher kol yatzur lefanecha ba, when the memory of every being formed comes before God. What memories do you revisit today? Whose presence do you recall? How will your Zichronot inform your aspirations for the coming year?
So beautiful. And you said Stephen did the arrangements for that.
Yeah, Stephen did the arrangement of that.
It's fantastic. It's a shame because Stephen, I don't know if you know this, but Stephen offered to do the same thing as he was doing for you for the United Synagogue in London. And unfortunately, they rejected him, which I just cannot understand. He said, I will rearrange and do things for the United Synagogue so the service will be enhanced and will be better. And you have something musical and the traditions will be 21st century without losing the meaning of the words and the meaning of the tefillah. And because they said no, you, for all those years, got the benefit of Stephen's work. So one door closes, another door opens. You have the benefit. Well, we should have had that benefit as well.
But Alex, first of all, he stayed within the Commonwealth. Secondly, you know, for those in the traditional synagogue music world, I don't think that Stephen's impact is in question. And whether it's the legacy that began with Shabbaton, that continued in Montreal, that continues now through his work, because he still does work. He certainly, for me, he writes a lot for me still. I know he collaborates with Jason Green, who is here with us today, and who is cantor in Ottawa, and who is an alum of the Shaar Hashomayim musical apparatus, and he is still the brilliant person and the person who has a passion for making synagogue music current and modern and fresh and relevant as he ever was. You know, the whole project that he and I did with Jeffrey Schisler's music was a labor of love for both of us, and certainly a connection to his past and the connection that he and Jeffrey shared at Wembley. And I would be remiss not to send my love to Myrna Glass, also known as Mum, who is here with us today. And we miss you, Mum, at our Seder table, and hope that you can be back here sooner rather than later.
I just have the most, I respect Stephen and the work that he does and admire him, and Alavai, I should have such talent as he has. But yeah, we've lost it. And I will say this is in public, Stephen is always very, very welcome at ECA, is always very welcome to teach us, to show us the new way, his way, and we will listen, because God bless you, Stephen, for all the work you've done.
And you know, those High Holy Day videos were actually the brainchild of Stephen, and the way that we recorded each chorister individually in front of a green screen, and then through movie magic put them all together like that. We actually got some rather unfriendly emails from members of the congregation when we put this out that said, what, social distancing doesn't apply to the Shaar Hashomayim choir? And well, that was all socially distanced, and it was a remarkable endeavor. But you know, it takes the creative brilliance of somebody like Stephen to make it happen. And I you know, my favorite times working with Stephen was when, as I said, there would be a moment. I mean, I remember a vote for Yamim Noraim. After the first couple of years of singing whatever it was that was in the repertoire when I came to the Shaar, he said, you know, I don't really like this very much. I said, I don't really either. So the first thing we did was we took down every book from each of our libraries that had a vote for Yamim Noraim in it. And we photocopied the pages, and we played and sang through each of them. Some of them we discarded the whole thing. Some of them we highlighted certain measures and discarded other ones. And after, you know, straining the broth, we were left with a really good consommé of material that we wanted to deal with. And then we wrote together the connective material that linked some of those ideas together. And the result was that we come up with pieces like the Schlesinger, or pieces like, you know, we wrote a whole catalog of Kaddish and Avot for every occasion: Tal Geshem, Nila, Rosh Hashanah Musaf, and you know, all of these places where I would say that the nusach used is sometimes questionable at best, And if there are choral arrangements, sometimes they're simplistic at best, with the exception of things that Raymond has touched, of course. And but we made our own versions of them, and as it were, created a nusach for the next generation. And that was really an important endeavor that we engaged in all the time.
So you were going to go and tell us about the different generations, the last generation and this generation.
Yeah,
I know it's a difficult thing to talk about, but you know.
Well, look, I think that that you know, I say this. I think it's something that goes from each generation in a family, and I think it's something that goes from each generation professionally too. That we learn from our predecessors what to do, and sometimes we also learn from our predecessors what not to do. And I think in particular of two concerts that I was very fortunate to participate in that were under the auspices of Eric Moses in Toronto. He called them the world's greatest cantors. I mean, it's a little bit of a preposterous title. And I certainly take no sense of accomplishment by having been added onto those posters. But I guess I had to tip Eric in order to get onto both of the rosters. But so the first one that we did was, and I don't remember what year, I would say about 2010, 2012, something like that. And I would call it, it was mostly what I would call the older generation. I'm not going to name names. And there were two younger generation people, myself and I think Ozzy Schwartz. And same concert hall each time. And the second concert was the next generation. Same concert hall, same stage, same green room. There's an expression I'm a sports fan, as you can tell. There's an expression when you talk about a team that doesn't necessarily want to play together. So they say 12 players, 12 taxis. In other words, they don't want to share a ride. They don't want to be together in the car. They want to go their own separate ways, and they happen to find themselves together on the ice or on the field or on the court. Pitch. And so that green room of the first concert was 12 people sitting in their own corners, sort of minding their own business. There was a screen where you could see what was going on stage and hear, and nobody was really paying much attention to what was going on there. Fast forward to the younger generation, and I will name names in the younger generation, because it was quite a few Machon Tel Aviv products, myself, Ozzy Schwartz, Netanel Hirschtick, there was Yankee Lemmer, there was Shai Abramson, I'm blanking on the others right now, but that green room was a raucous environment where we were all crowded around the TV to hear what was being sung. And afterwards, there were high fives and fist bumps and hugs and a sense of closeness and camaraderie and mutual support that I just don't know that it existed among our predecessors in the same way. And I can certainly speak to the atmosphere that Naftali, Raymond, and Chaim worked so hard to create and still create at the Tel Aviv school, which was this atmosphere of firgun in Hebrew, of support, of camaraderie, of encouragement. There would be times when we would do concerts at big venues and the sort of quote unquote stars of the school would be the soloists. And then there would be concerts that would be in-house where the ones who didn't get the solos at the bigger concerts got to sing their pieces. And it was raucous and supportive and rowdy and you know, whistling and whooping and hollering. And that kind of camaraderie that they created is so special. And
but we witnessed that, didn't we, Gideon, in Prague,
yeah,
where Naftali brought his students, and you were among them, Isidoro. Again, I mean, the choir was made up of a real cross-section of different people from different backgrounds. But when the captain spoke or the captain said something, everybody had that derech eretz. And listen, this is so remarkable that you don't normally see.
something so special happened that night that made me feel wonderful and old at the same time. Two guys from the Machon whose names I had only heard from Naftali when he was raving about the current crop of students, and I only met them for the first time in Prague. They sang at the concert at the temple.
Spanish Shul.
At the Spanish Shul, yes, sorry, I couldn't remember the name. At the Spanish Shul. And afterwards, they came and parked themselves next to me at the meal afterwards, and they said, "Okay, Gideon, tagid lanu ma chashavta aleinu." Tell us what you thought of us. And I said, "What? Really?" And they said, "Yeah, we've heard so much about you from Raymond and Naftali. Now we want to know what you think of what we did tonight." And it was a little bit of a, harsh icebreaker for getting to know you. I mean, it's a little bit of a forward question on a first date, so to speak. But the fact that we were separated by nearly 20 years from being at the school together, and yet they felt this closeness, this willingness to learn from me and to hear what I thought of them. And the result is that I've developed a wonderful friendship with these guys now, long distance, and through the miracles of Zoom and WhatsApp and so on. And we continue the next generations of the school supporting each other that way. It's really very special.
So,
and kudos to kudos to Raymond and Naftali and Chaim for making that happen.
It's so wonderful. That's why we, under the Julian Klein Scholarship Program, send boys to Naftali, and Baruch Hashem, we've sent seven young men who have qualified and become cantors in their own right through the study and through the scholarship. So we support Naftali and we support schools like that. That's not taking anything away from Jackie Mendelson and people like that at HUC or JTS, which is again a very, very strong program, which a 4 or 5 year program. And people don't realize to become a chazan is not a 5-minute job. There's so many things involved. It's actually I think a lot more difficult than sometimes to become a rabbi, because the fact is you have to know not just a halacha about tefillah, you've got to motivate a kahila and do various other things and wear so many different hats. So it's difficult.
I don't want to enter into the slippery slope of putting the rabbi, the cantor, and their various educations and roles at odds from each other. I will tell you that I did a concert years ago here in Montreal where the rabbi at this particular shul introduced the concert with the following. He said, people think that the rabbi has the most difficult role at a synagogue because the rabbi is expected to come up with new, inspirational, current, relevant, timely material each week to inspire the congregants. I think that the cantor has the most challenging role because the cantor has to say the same words every week and to adhere to a proper formula to say them, and yet has to find a way to make them fresh, timely, relevant, topical, etc. And I did not view that as setting the two roles in opposition. I view that as an appreciation that we're both different sides of the same coin with the same mission of how to engage our communities.
I look at it as a huge compliment. I think those words that I should remember those, and they're absolutely superb. Now, another dimension of your story. I mean, you say you're a passionate sports fan, baseball fan, and you go.
I sang the national anthem. I sang the national anthem.
That's what I wanted to ask you. How did you get to sing the national anthem? I know is it Shulam Lemmer has done it and Yankee Lemmer has done it. You did it way before them. And how did a nice Jewish boy get to stand in the middle of a field of people that you absolutely worship and adore in some respects, being a sports fan? Fenway Park, is it, or wherever it was?
Fenway Park is where the Boston Red Sox play and where I first went to see a baseball game when I was 6 years old. And truthfully, it happened because a friend of mine who's a a singer here in Montreal who had been singing anthems for the Canadians for a bunch of years. A former choir member, somebody that Jason knows very well, Joseph Kaiser, who was who studied music at McGill, who went on to sing at the Metropolitan Opera and Covent Garden and most of the major opera houses, and has now, for the last years during COVID and on the high holidays before that, has been the cantorial soloist at Temple Emmanuel Beth Shalom, the Reform Synagogue here in Montreal. He told the person who books anthem singers for the Canadians that they should audition me. So I sang for them once. They turned the lights on in the 21,000 seat stadium just for me. And I said, okay, who else are you auditioning today? They said, nobody, just you. Okay. So a few weeks later, they booked me to sing anthems for a Canadians game against the Philadelphia Flyers. And being a dual citizen as I am, American and Canadian, I got to sing both anthems, which are precious to me. And then somebody who I know got a recording off of the radio of those anthems and sent them to a friend of his who worked for the Boston Red Sox. And all of a sudden they asked me if I would sing at Fenway Park, which it's a remarkable thing. But, you know, the most amazing part of it is that so many people come to you from the seats afterwards as you're walking around. They recognize you and they say, I was so proud to see a yarmulke standing on the field or standing on the ice or whatever it is. You know, it's the little things that we can do in our communities that make people proud and give them a sense of pride and association that go so far to making people feel that the role of the chazan is a valuable one in an age of attrition and in an age where fewer and fewer shuls have professional chazanim. You know, it's bits of added value that we have to search for sometimes. Sometimes they're hard to find, sometimes they're easy to find. And in this case, this is one that brings me a tremendous amount of joy and enjoyment. And
also singing with the Montreal Symphony and orchestra of that caliber.
Yeah, you know,
again, that's a wow factor. How did that come about?
Well, we had the Montreal Symphony. Shaar Hashomayim has always celebrated milestone events and occasions in the congregation's history with symphony concerts. So I think the 145th, 150th, 155th, 160th anniversary, they all had symphony concerts where we had orchestra in the sanctuary, and some of those were productions that Stephen and I did together. Some of them were productions that preceded both of us. So this was a tradition that we found, each of us, when we came to the Shaar. And so in 2017, it was the 170th anniversary of the Shaar. And one of the interesting things is that two things premiered in 1846. One of them is Shaar Hashomayim, and one of them is Mendelssohn's Elijah. So through the relationship that I nurtured to get with Kent Nagano, who was at that point the music director of the Montreal Symphony and now is the music director emeritus, we brought the Montreal Symphony to Shaar Hashomayim to do Elijah. And when it came, you know, it's actually a beautiful story. Nagano grew up in San Francisco and in a church-going family. And he was a double major at the Berklee Conservatory in conducting and piano. And he said in those days they had 20 practice rooms for 50 piano majors. So you could camp outside any of the practice rooms for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you couldn't find a piano to practice on. So he went to the church where he belonged and where he went every Sunday since his childhood and asked if he could use their piano, and they said no. He went to two other churches and they said no. He went to the big Reformed temple in the downtown San Francisco and asked if he could use their piano, and they gave him a key and said, come and go as you please. He became friendly with the cantor and the organist. That was the synagogue that Ernest Bloch was a member of, and he wrote Avodat HaKodesh, the sacred service, for that synagogue. So every year they put on a production of it, and he conducted it for 2 or 3 years as a student before he went off to his international career. So when he met me, he told me this story, and he said it's always been important to him to nurture a connection with the Jewish community wherever he was conducting. And I thought that was a really amazing story and something that's not very likely to happen, probably at most synagogues and certainly in this day and age. And but how fortunate we were that it did happen. And so during 2020, when the OSM, the Orchestre Symphonique de Montréal, was putting together a musical Advent calendar online because all their performances were canceled. The artistic director contacted me and said, we'd like to put something on for Hanukkah. And so I can show you what we did. I love the holiday sounding arrangement too.
Yeah, very much so.
It took me a great deal of hunting to find a French singing translation of Mao's Sur. And I ended up getting it from someone in Paris. We have a number of Parisian members of the congregation who called various sources and got me the text that I sang.
I want to go on to Leonard Cohen, somebody who I admired, who is very dark and very moody in his music and his interpretation. I believe he was a member of your shul, or maybe I got it wrong. But how did
you got it? You got it right.
Right.
Leonard was not just a member. Leonard was a member of one of the prominent families in the congregation. His great-grandfather and grandfather were both presidents of the congregation. And, you know, for people who know how congregations typically work, there are presidencies turn over every 2 or 3 years, something like that. And I see one of my past presidents, Jonathan Schneiderman, here with us, whose mother and father were both presidents of the congregation. The Cohens, father and son, were president of the congregation for a period of 37 out of 40 years. So it was a real dynasty of Cohens at the synagogue. This was not just an in-passing association that Leonard's family had. His grandfather presided over the construction of our current building, which is the third building that the congregation has been housed in, and which is this fall will celebrate our 100th anniversary at this location. So when I came to the Shaar, I was certainly made aware of Leonard's connection to the synagogue, and I like to joke that when you come to Montreal as an immigrant, there are three things you need to know, especially a Jewish Montreal immigrant. There are three things you need to learn: that Montreal bagels are the best bagels in the world, that the Montreal Canadiens are the best sports franchise in the world, and that everything musically and poetry-wise revolves around Leonard Cohen. So I knew some of the hits, but I didn't really know the entire catalog, nor did I know his life story, nor did I know so well his connections to his Jewish identity. And it's that point when you begin to discover things like his first album. One of the songs that's on the first album he released is called The Story of Isaac, which is his midrash on Akedat Yitzchak. And all through his life, both literary and musical, you see constant allusions to Bible stories, to liturgy, and not just Jewish liturgy and not just Old Testament stories, but he was an equal opportunity explorer of different faiths. His most famous is his lifelong association with Buddhist thought and philosophy, and the fact that he spent 6 years in silence atop Mount Baldy, a very well-known Buddhist monastery in the California mountains. But Leonard never stopped being a Jew. He was based in Los Angeles for most of his career, and so we didn't see him very much in Montreal. He was at one family funeral that I officiated at early on in my years at the Shaar. But when I made my first recording together with Stephen and the Shaar Choir, a copy of it found its way to Leonard through a cousin of his, and she told me that he was positively impressed by it. And she gave me his email address and said, maybe you should be in touch. I didn't know how to casually write to Leonard Cohen, so I waited till before Rosh Hashanah and wished him a good year. And he wrote me back one of the most remarkable emails I've ever received. He said, "May your voice reach that place with a capital P and bring down the blessings." And that to me is still the most beautiful description of what our role as a chazan is. That we are supposed to be the conduit to a higher place and bring the blessings down for the people that we represent. And only Leonard could put something so pithy, so true, so succinct, so beautiful together. And this began a correspondence. I would write him before Pesach to say Chag Sameach from the gate of heaven. He would write back to me saying, "I'll see you at the foot of Mount Sinai. I'll be the one wearing headphones." And all of his emails, he would sign off fraternally Eliezer. He always referred to himself to me as by his Hebrew name. So this went on for a number of years. And in the fall of 2015, he sent an email to me and said, "I hope you are well. I wonder if you would be interested in a potential collaboration. I'm looking for the sound of the cantor and choir of my youth on my new album." And I was dumbfounded. I received this. I opened my email at about 6:30 in the morning and shouted things that no chazan should shout. And then I tried to nonchalantly write him back by saying, "Hallelujah, I'm your man. Let's talk." And the result was that he sent a rough draft of "You Want It Darker," the song that was the title track from the album that he last released while he was still among the living. And for those of you who might know the song, immediately you hear two things. Thing number one, you hear "Magnified, sanctified be thy holy name," which of course is Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah. The next thing you hear is the chorus of the song. The refrain of the song is Leonard singing "Hineni, Hineni, here I am. And for all of us who are acquainted with the reference, it's an obvious reference to Akedat Yitzchak, that Avraham is about to sacrifice Yitzchak, and a voice cries out from heaven saying, Avraham, Avraham. And Avraham's answer is, Hineni. Leonard viewed this as an expression of readiness to serve without question. And you know, the whole album is really a musing on the end of his life and on the reckonings that he's doing with the things that he felt good about and less good about, and the feelings that he was going to leave this world with. I knew he was old. I knew he was frail. I didn't realize, none of us realized that when the record was released in September of 2016, that the first week of November, or actually the second week of November, November 7th, he would leave this world. And so Leonard's son, Adam, was the producer of the record. And we got this rough draft of the song, and we were asked to put together choral backing for it. Now, for anybody who knows about Leonard's body of work, Leonard always sang with female backup singers. Leonard's voice was this subterranean kind of grumble, and he always clothed it in this angelic sheen of female voices, which I think sort of matched his reputation as a ladies' man. And he, all of a sudden, to turn to a male choir, and not just any male choir, but the male choir from the synagogue where he grew up, was really a remarkable departure for him. And I remember sitting down with Adam, his son, over lunch the day that we recorded You Want It Darker, and I asked him two questions. The first question, I said, well, why us? Leonard Cohen could have anybody in the world recording backing vocals for him. Why us? And he said, Leonard feels very close to Shaar Hashomayim, and he feels very close to Montreal. And at this juncture in his life, the connection is very important to him. Now, what would come to transpire was that in April, that was in November of 2015. In April of 2016, Leonard reached out to me very quietly and asked me to verify the location of his cemetery plot at our cemetery. And I think that he, and before Rosh Hashanah that year, he asked me to go visit his family's graves. I think he knew that something was coming. The next question that I asked Adam was, how does the song end? Because we had this rough draft, and the song sort of trailed off into the distance. We had come up with choir parts that he and Leonard had approved, but there was no verifiable ending to the song. So we went into the studio here in Montreal. Leonard was in Los Angeles. We never recorded together at the same time. He recorded his material in Los Angeles, actually from an orthopedic chair that his son set up in his living room because he was so frail. And we recorded until around 1:30 in the morning, at which point Adam then turned to me and he said, have you thought of an ending for the song? I said, really? And no, not really. Have you? He said, not really. Any ideas? I said, well, there is one song on his previous album, which is called Nevermind. And in between the verses of the song, there is an Arabic singer, sort of improvising in a makam prayer mode kind of way on the word salam. I said, what if I improvised in a cantorial sounding way on the word hineni? He said, okay, sounds interesting. Let's go try it. So we set up a microphone. I went into the room. I recorded hineni for about 7 minutes, different ways, and then left, and then never heard anything about it until the following week. I got an email from Leonard saying, the ending of the song is beautiful. I love it. And okay. And then the next time I heard it was in August of 2016 when Sony sent out a listening copy to people who were involved, and Hineni made the end of the song.
Can we hear it, please?
For sure, we can hear it. I'll tell. Yeah, we'll hear it, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about it.
Okay, fabulous.
This, by the way, this is from a concert that was in Montreal in August of 2017. It was in honor of the 150th anniversary of Montreal. No, yes, 150 of Montreal, or maybe it's 175. Jonathan will remind me. Jonathan, 175 or 150?
350.
350. Okay, sorry. See, okay, I got it wrong. 350th anniversary of the city of Montreal, and it was a concert that was on the side of Mount Royal, where Montreal derives its name. There were about 90,000 people splayed out along the mountain, and the three symphony orchestras of the city played together with us, and this was a tribute that we did to Leonard as part of that concert.
What a wonderful, moving tribute. Absolutely magnificent.
Thanks, Alex. The whole experience of working with Leonard was remarkable on a number of different levels, and in particular as it relates to the role of the chazan and so on. There are two things for me. One is that that Leonard himself gave an interview that was only published after he passed away, where he said something along these lines, that there are times that you want to show. First of all, actually, he said that the cantor and choir were the only part of compulsory synagogue attendance that he enjoyed from his youth, which some people at the synagogue didn't like to hear. But you know, Leonard said it, so I'm not going to argue with it. The second thing he said was that there are times that you want to show, to raise the flag and to show pride and to show that there is nourishment to be gained from a tradition like this. And that leads me to always tell, when I meet younger cantors, to tell them that, you know, we can't phone it in. You never know who is sitting behind you and how the things that we do, the songs that we sing, the way that we daven, the way that we carry ourselves in the community, how that embeds itself in the mind and in the heart of a person, and the way that that will then impact them later on in their lives. And the fact that Leonard wanted to make our sound, the synagogue sound that he grew up with, part of his artistic opus and part of his last statement that he released to the world before he left it, is something that is so moving to me. And the second thing is that I'm very proud of the fact that we did this while still sounding like a synagogue choir, and I did it while still sounding like a chazan. That this wasn't a matter of taking a pop tune and putting it on to words from the Siddur or something like that. This was something that could authentically be heard in any of our shuls, the harmonies, the coloratura, whatever it is, and that was something that was very important to me in terms of the my artistic vision for myself and the way I carry myself. And I think it's brought tremendous attention to the importance of music in synagogues. Just last week, we were very honored that the Forward named us the number 2 in their list of 150 most important Jewish pop songs. It's nice to see those things, but for me, it's nice because it brings attention to cantors and to shul choirs and to synagogue music. And we need all the help that we can get. And I'm happy that this brought attention to the work that we do.
So besides coming to the next ECA convention in Budapest in November, what's on your bucket list? What's
on my bucket list? Boy. Well, I actually, for the first time in the last 2 years, I actually have some traveling and concertizing to do. In particular, I'll be in Houston at the end of March, where Beth Yeshurun is having a concert to honor Mayor Finkelstein. And I'll be performing there together with Mayor and Ozzy Schwartz and Nathaniel Hershtik and Cantor Rachel Goldman from California. And so I'll be excited to do that. And without revealing too much, there is a big Leonard Cohen related thing that will be happening in New York in April. For me, the other thing that I didn't know it was on my bucket list until fate put it there was that one of the ways that I tried to be active and connect to my congregation during this pandemic was that in the spring of 2020, I started doing a class on Zoom on Thursday nights that I call a night at the opera. And it was a way to force myself to listen to music because it was getting so depressing that everything was closed down. No more shul, no more shul choir, no more recordings, no more concerts, no more nothing. I decided to share my love of opera with my congregation. And so the first week I played lyric tenors to about 30 people on Zoom. And the next week I played cantors who became opera singers or opera singers who became cantors, and I had about 40 people on Zoom. And the week after that I played baritones and I had about 45 people on Zoom. And over the course of the next 18, 20 months, it has mushroomed to the point that at the beginning of January, I did something about West Side Story, the musical, followed by the 1961 movie, followed by the new movie, and Bernstein, and so forth. And I sold out my 500-person Zoom account and had to up it to a 1,000-person Zoom account. And the only place that I've advertised it is through the synagogue's mailing list. And it's really just something that has captivated people. And I think that I never knew that I had it in me to do something like that, but it's something that I've managed to discover and has now become, I think, a really important part of what I do in the community and at the shul.
So do your children involve themselves in services, or have you passed on your traditions to your family and sing as a family choir, or are you encouraging them to do something else or follow in your footsteps?
I encourage them, but I don't push them. My oldest has sung some duets with me on Yamim Noraim and at Slichot over the last few years. That video that you saw of Zacharti Lach when I was talking about his bar mitzvah, that actually did happen this past September, although it did not happen in the way that we would have dreamt about it. It didn't happen on Shabbat. Instead, it happened on a Thursday morning so that we could broadcast it throughout our different parts of my family. I actually didn't talk any bit about my family, but my father's American. My mother was born in Curacao, and my grandparents growing up lived in The Hague. So I have tremendous connections to the synagogue in Curacao as well as to the liberal community in The Hague. And so we had people online from different continents and different time zones as part of Max's bar mitzvah. And Ben, my younger one, I have two boys. They're Max and Ben. Ben is 10 years old. And Ben spends at least 2 or 3 hours every afternoon playing Mozart and Chopin on the piano, and has become quite the little prodigy. And I'm happy that they've come to it out of, on their own and not me pushing them to it, because I think the harder you push as a parent, sometimes the farther they push back. And so I want this to be something that they come to. But we are a musical family. Growing up, my wife used to do Broadway productions at her schools, and she's now on the staff, the management staff at Camp Yavne in New Hampshire. And so there's lots of Jewish life that emanates from our household, and it's really a blessing. And I'm a very lucky guy.
Thank you so much. What I'm going to do is thank you for a fabulous and fascinating evening. I'm going to pass this now over to Russell, and if anybody wants to ask you some questions or make some comments, the floor is open to be able to do that. And thank you so much for a wonderful evening, and it's so beautiful to see you again. Next time, please God, it should be in person, and we'll look forward to that. And over to Russell now. Thank you.
Well, thank you. This is an opportunity if anybody wishes to ask Gideon a question. There was a question put by Gail Lipschitz some time ago, which was, who was the second cantor whose music was mixed with Lewandowski's music?
Oh, Raymond can answer that question, because I think it's a bit of a conundrum, right? Is it Schlesinger, Schulzinger? Where's Raymond?
Raymond's still here. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah, we can hear you. Who is it?
Well, according to the family of Victor Schlesinger, who happen to be very close friends of mine, they maintain that it is a piece that was written by Victor Schlesinger, who was in Amsterdam and afterwards in Manchester. For many years, he was the founder of the Manchester Jewish Male Choir. However, Jacob Motzen, when he first introduced us to the piece, there was no real proper title. He said to us, Schulzinger. Now, there were a few composers by the name of Schulzinger. I've looked at certain pieces by that very same composer, and it made no sense at all that it would be by Schulzinger. There was another guy called Schlesinger, who was associated with Park Avenue Synagogue. And he was a reform cantor, beautiful Eitzheim, which Azzy did record, and I rearranged, and it was on that. Why I think it happens to be Victor Schlesinger is that Schlesinger happens to have a unique lyric quality in his writing, like Lewandowski, once heard, never forgotten.
I like to think that it's Victor Schlesinger because that makes another Dutch connection for me. And when
according to Rivka, it is Victor's piece, and according to the guy who puts on the concerts in Amsterdam, he traced that also to Victor. So I think you're right, Raymond.
The other interesting thing for our purposes is that when I was researching this for putting it together a blurb about it in our recording, Raymond sent me a bio of Victor Schlesinger, which includes in the bio that in 1913 he applied for the position of cantor at Shaar Hashomayim in Montreal, and turned it down in order to stay in, I believe, Manchester.
No, he was in Amsterdam, but because he was a baritone, he did not win the famous competition, which was awarded to Morocco. And Morocco, unfortunately, landed up in Sobibor. So he came to Manchester. And unfortunately, his last few years in the 30s, he was trying to help the fellow Yidden leave Europe and come to Manchester. His demise is a very sad story because apparently, according to his family, he was on a bus going home, and one of those old British buses which had this beautiful pole as you stepped on at the back. The bus stopped suddenly, and apparently he knocked himself against the pole, went home, and he said to his wife, "I feel very tired," and he went to lie down, and he never got up again.
For those of you who don't... 50s. For those of you who don't know, Raymond also specializes in the demise of musicians.
Well, there you go, Gail. You asked that question. Cantor Paul Heller, you had your hand up. I see you put it down. Did you wish to put it up again and ask a question?
Yes, I just want to thank Cantor Zelermyer. I want to say one thing, only one thing, and that is that for me, as I know for many other cantors, having you as a role model is a very important part of our profession, and I thank you for that. I thank you for your humbleness. I thank you for the way you interpret and you show how a chazan has to do his job. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's so kind of you.
Thank you. Faith, you have a question. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, Faith.
Hey,
Hi, Faith.
Yashar Koach, Yashar Koach to all of you. This has been just so uplifting and wonderful.
Twice
So,
in one day,
Hu
Faith.
Yashmienu together?
Oh, Vehu. Yes, see, you still have all of your voice sopranohood. Vehu. Vehu.
Vehu Yashmienu.
Yashmiel.
Yashmienu.
Yeah, I know. I just chose this out. Berachamon.
Yashmienu berachamav Hashemi.
Yeah.
Those
oh
were
my
the days. Those were the days.
Well, these still are the days. Thanks to you, and like what you said was so inspiring. We have to keep it going. We have to keep the torch lit. We have to honk our own horn. You didn't say that exactly, but
No,
like sing the anthems, get it out there, be overt about our cantorial heritage, and recreate it and serve it up in a way that people can. Thank you for keeping people on the same page. Yashar Koach on the Machzor. Thank you. Thank
I'm
you.
actually in the process of doing a bespoke siddur for us now because we're ditching art school finally and moving to Kor and sax.
Baruch Hashem.
But Faith, I have to tell you, I didn't know it or appreciate it maybe as much as I should have at the time, but you and Don were planting the seeds very, very early for me.
Oh, do you remember that incredible Mariv by Moshe Ganshoff?
I do.
Where Israel Goldstein sat at the piano and played?
I do.
And Jacob Mendelson and the School of Sacred Music Choir and Don Gurney conducting, and oh my gosh, and the organ, the piano.
These were the experiences that I had when I was a kid, and I had no way of knowing that they would become my life. But they were there, and that's why I say again, latent in the back of our minds, we don't know how these things are going to impact the people who are listening, and we just have to constantly we can't phone it in. It matters too much, and we have to give our all to everything we do.
Yeah, just to stay in the express lane, keep expressing.
Yeah.
Faith, you just brought that to the fore of my mind. I mean, I'd forgotten all about these things, and your energy and your enthusiasm. You have to bring these things out, and if you can post them so people can get a taste of what we're talking about, because unless people get a taste, they don't. You have no conception of anything until you actually see it or feel it. And we felt it, Faith felt it, Gideon's felt it, and when you know that, you know you've got something special, and that's what we're trying to do. People shy away sometimes because they're frightened of the unknown, or they don't know what to expect, or nobody has told them. So tefillah is something that is personal, but it's something that's congregational, something that elevates, but it's something that I think is the least taught in any synagogue or anywhere around the Jewish world. People seem to shy away from tefillah, from the siddur, from the understanding of the prayer and the elevation. It's the most beautiful thing. The Psalms, the words and everything. And I strongly believe that with people like you, Faith, Gideon, congregations like you, to elevate this and to teach the congregants the beauty of what they've got already there. The Zulzas, the Lewandowskis, the Mombas, whatever it might be.
especially in a case like mine, because I really have this, I mean, it's not fair to call it an endangered, well, no, it is an endangered species that, you know, to have a shul with a choir, men's choir, a full davening and so forth, and have that, you know, my congregants, my kids, their contemporaries that grow up in Montreal, they don't know that it's any different anywhere else. They think that this is the way shuls are. And then they go off to university, or they go live in New York, or they go whatever, then they call me and they say, why can't I find a shul like the Shaar? And I say, because they don't exist.
So what's the answer? So is there an answer? I know there's not a quick fix, but what is the way of turning it around? Because we don't need to reinvent the wheel, it's already there, and we shouldn't fix things that are not broken because they weren't broken. So like the Cheder system and the old, I mean, it wasn't broken. It served a purpose to the Jew in the pew, who maybe were not Shomer Shabbat, who didn't know anything, but through the familiarity and being part of something, they grew into of their own volition. So how do we get that back?
I don't know that we can exactly get it back. I think that in certain ways the ship has sailed, but I also think that, you know, certainly in places like mine, it's something that's very important to the leadership and to the congregants, that this is part of the identity of our community, and we don't want it to go away. And the result is that, you know, I can't tell you how many people, whether it's colleagues or friends, family, whatever, they find themselves in Montreal for any number of different reasons. They come to Shaar Hashomayim, and the emotional response, it's so visceral, it's so powerful to them. They come and they say, I haven't heard a shul like this since my childhood, or I didn't know that still existed. I didn't know. And how do you maintain it? Well, look, first of all, you maintain it because it has to become a communal value to put forth the resources to maintain it. You know, maintaining a shul choir and a cantor and a music director is not a small investment, but our shul makes it. Secondly, I think it's incumbent upon us as the professionals to carry ourselves in a certain way. You know, it's too easy to point the fingers at either insecure rabbis or at uneducated lay leadership. That's too easy. Cantors have done our own damage to our own profession over the generations too, and all of us have to work together to make sure that this value of creating meaningful prayer experiences for people is one that is important in our communities. It's not just us, it's all of us doing it together.
Marshall Rolnick has had his hand up for quite a long time, Alex. So Marshall, I can see you come off mute now. Let's hear Marshall.
Okay, I just wanted to first of all say hello to Gideon. I haven't seen him since a couple of years ago at the Emmanuel at a concert that Joseph led, and it started with Arthur Corrette singing. I can't remember if it was the national anthem or what he sang.
No. It was Tzemach Sons V'Shamru.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And we no, I'm sorry, it was not Tzemach Sons V'Shamru. It was Joseph. What was it? Hashkivenu, Kachko, Hashkivenu.
Oh, right.
It was an amazing thing that Joseph took the vocal of Corrette and he orchestrated it and accompanied him from the next world, and it was really something that only Joseph can do.
Joseph is amazing, as are you, and Alex, you did a great job interviewing Gideon, although it probably wasn't that difficult because Gideon's a great speaker. He takes after his father, probably has a photographic memory. And
Marshall, you know what my parents' line was? My parents had a line. My mother had a line for this: Jerry talks for a living, and I live for talking.
And maybe we can just bring in Joseph as he's here, because Joseph had the Gideon talks very, very passionately about you, Joseph, about the part you played in his career in the early days, and the emotional, how emotional
Joseph,
you were when he said he was going to go to Naphtali. So,
Gideon, I was going to say something nice.
You're offending both of us.
Let me just say that Gideon inspired me to be a better musician, because if I have someone that really wants to, from his heart and soul, or her heart and soul, make music, I am totally there. And he was, I don't know, 17, 16, whatever, he started singing for me or with me. And, Gideon, thank you for what you said. It was extremely touching to hear from you. And it's a two-way street. That's all I could say.
Make sure your check is in Canadian dollars, Joseph.
Say that again?
Make sure your check is in Canadian dollars.
And I think we also need to congratulate Joseph on his doctorate.
Oh,
so
right, Dr. Ness. I forgot about that. Mazel tov.
There you go.
I'd like to congratulate Faith Steinsnyder for a doctorate too.
Oh, did she get her doctorate?
Sorry, Faith.
It's not for what we've done, and I'm being very honest with you. It's not what I've done over the years. It's that we've lasted this long, and that's kind of the story. But that's to be thankful. I just want to say one more thing, a story about Gideon. So I was doing a concert with Yossi Malavani. I don't know if Gideon remembers, but he sang in that. Yossi Malavani we did the Rachmaninoff Second Piano Concerto and Reutemann and Rivlin and everything. And then in comes this really young guy, Kuda from Eugene Onegin, obviously Gideon, and he just added so much to that concert. It was just, I have 1,000 memories of Gideon, and I hope to have 1,000 more. And,
Joseph,
I love you a lot.
You're the best. I love you too.
Me too. I'm a big fan. You know that, Joseph.
Well, I don't see any other hands up. We have run rather long, but then this is the last in the current series, and so we kind of I won't say we left the best till the last, because they've all been great.
Russell, I've experienced alphabetical discrimination my whole life, so I understand. It's okay.
I think, Alex, it's just time perhaps to remind people that while this is the end of the second series of Voice of the Cantor, all the recordings, including this one after this weekend, are available on our website, www.cantors.eu, and of course we've archived them there. And also to say that our next big event is, as has been mentioned this evening, the 14th Cantors Convention, which is scheduled for Budapest from the 2nd to the 6th of November, and further details of that will be available after Pesach, and we hope everyone will feel that they can take details of that and hopefully see you in Budapest.
And
Alec,
I would like, as I said before, I would love you to come, Gideon, from the bottom of my heart, because you will enjoy it. Some of your colleagues are there, hopefully COVID permitting, and we just want to do it.
The experience in Prague was unbelievable, and it was special to me as well because my wife's family comes from Prague. And to go to the Jeruzalemska Synagogue, where her grandparents were married before the war, it just meant so much. The program you put on was so wonderful, and I really hope that I can be a part of this one too.
Please God, I hope so as well, because you're so welcome. And if you can drag Stephen Glass with you, that will be also very good.
After this, you have to do one in Curacao. I think everybody will be happier to go there in November.
I would love to go there. God bless you. Thank you so much. And please keep looking at our Facebook page and also the website www.cantors.eu.
You got it.
And it's so important. I got it in one, and it's very important. You can have all the backlog of the Voice of the Cantor series 1 and series 2, plus various other things that we've posted. Thank you so much. And we look forward to Series 3 in the not too distant future. Stay well, stay safe. God bless you, and thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.